Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating and, pretty provocative idea. It's a framework that tries to connect the ancient world of Islamic mysticism with the brand new discoveries of modern science. So, let's get right into it. So this is the big question at the heart of our explainer today. And this isn't just a thought experiment, right? It's a really serious attempt to see if we can re-examine spirituality in our scientific age. I mean, can the language we've used for centuries to talk about the soul actually find some common ground with the tools we now use to understand the brain?
All right, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll tackle the big idea. Is a science of the soul even possible? Then, we need to get a handle on traditional Sufism to see where this is all coming from. After that, we'll look at why some people saw a need for a filter. That leads us straight into BioIslam as a new synthesis. And finally, we'll see what's left. What incredible concepts of awe and wonder actually make it through this whole process.
Okay, so let's start with the foundational idea. Now, the goal here isn't to replace faith with science or to try and prove religion, not at all. It's more about asking if these two really powerful ways of knowing can they speak to each other? And by doing that, could we create a whole new framework for understanding our place in the cosmos?
So the term that's been coined for this framework is BioIslam. And at its heart, it's pretty much what it sounds like, a scientific Islam. It's an approach that doesn't shy away from modern science, but actually engages with it, especially in fields like neuroscience that are trying to figure out the mysteries of human consciousness. You could say it's a very deliberate attempt to build a bridge between the world of faith and the world of empirical, data-driven discovery.
And it's really important to get this. This isn't just some casual opinion piece. What we're unpacking here is based on a solid, researched argument. It's all about putting forward what's called a post-Sufi framework. And that word post is key. It means something that comes after Sufism, that builds on it, but also reevaluates its ancient wisdom through the lens of everything we know today from science.
So to really understand what post-Sufi even means, we've got to take a step back and get a clear picture of Sufism itself. This is the mystical foundation, the deep well of spiritual insight and practice that BioIslam is drawing from, and also what it's questioning. The traditional term is tasawwuf, which most of us know as Sufism. And the absolute key here is the focus on experience, not just belief. The whole goal for a Sufi isn't just to agree with a set of ideas, but to cultivate a direct, personal, and powerful experience of the divine. It's kind of like the difference between just looking at a map of a country and actually traveling through it.
And this slide really breaks that down into two core concepts. First, you have ihsan. This is all about developing a kind of inner vision, a heartfelt imagination that's so strong one can, in a sense, see the divine. Then there's irfan, or marifa, which is basically gnosis. Think of it as a kind of mystical intuition, a way of knowing that's seen as a higher faculty, something more direct than intellectual reason, known as aqlier, or the formal knowledge you get from books, known as ilm.
So that brings us to a really important question. If Sufism is this rich, deep tradition, why the call for something new, for a post-Sufi idea? Well, according to this line of argument, the answer lies in centuries of historical baggage and, frankly, misunderstandings that have often made its core ideas pretty murky.
And this isn't a new problem. The source material we're looking at points out that even top scholars throughout history have found Sufism, and I'm quoting here, dauntingly difficult to write about. Because it's so focused on personal experience, it's just really hard to pin down with words. And that's left the door wide open for all sorts of misinterpretations over the years.
And maybe the biggest misunderstanding of all, the one that leads a lot of people to dismiss it completely, is this idea that Sufism is just about the veneration of saints. But that popular image, well, it pretty much ignores the deep, scholarly history of the practice and instead focuses on these later folk traditions that got mixed in with it.
This timeline does a great job of showing that split. You see, the tradition starts way back in the prophetic period, with practices like tahannuth, which is basically private meditation. By the time you get to the great scholar al-Ghazali in the 12th century, it's a totally respected, even celebrated part of mainstream Islamic thought. It was only in the later centuries that you see these popular, blended veneration practices really take hold. So the whole argument of the post-Sufi approach is, hey, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's not discard the profound core just because of these later additions.
And this is where we get to the heart of BioIslam. It's presented as a modern synthesis. It offers a clear method, a filter, if you will, to try and distill the essence of that original, profound tradition in a way that makes sense with how we understand the world today.
So what exactly is this filter? Well, it's basically a four-step process. You start with the entire rich tradition of Sufism. Then you apply this strict filter based on what modern neuroscience and consciousness studies are telling us. You know, what do we know about meditation, about intuition, about states of awe? You hold on to the concepts that are consistent with that science, or are even illuminated by it. And then, and this is the important part, you don't just keep what's left, you elevate it. You recognize it has a renewed power and relevance. Okay, this slide is absolutely key because it puts everything side by side. On one hand, you have traditional tasawwuf. Its goal is to reach irfan, or gnosis, using intuition, imagination, and these spiritual exercises passed down for centuries. On the other hand, the post-Sufi approach, BioIslam, it has the same goal, understanding reality, but it adds these powerful new lenses from neuroscience and consciousness studies into the mix. So the method changes. It becomes about applying that pro-science filter to pull out what it sees as the pure, most essential parts of that original tradition.
So the big question is, after you run everything through this filter, what's left? What parts of this ancient mysticism not only hold up under scientific scrutiny, but are actually made even more powerful by it? Well, the answer seems to be found in these deep human experiences of awe and wonder.
So the first big concept that gets elevated is hera. That's pronounced Hira. And this isn't just being surprised, it's a deep, cosmic awe. It's that feeling you get when you really think about the size of the universe that the James Webb Telescope is showing us, or the mind-boggling complexity of our own DNA. The argument is that this ancient idea finds its most potent expression today, not in spite of science, but actually because of it. Science becomes this amazing tool for generating Hera. And the sister concept to that is Heba, pronounced Heba. This is described as the expansive joy of bewilderment. It's not being confused and frustrated. It's a positive, joyful embrace of mystery. It's that feeling of wonder a physicist has when they're grappling with the weirdness of quantum mechanics. It's realizing that the more we learn about reality, the more incredible and mysterious it actually becomes.
And that's really the punchline here, the major conclusion this framework leads to. The idea that a scientific understanding of the universe, far from making the world feel cold and meaningless, can actually be the greatest source of spiritual wonder we have. It suggests that faith and science don't have to be enemies. They can be partners, working together on this human quest for meaning, making our capacity for awe and bewilderment even deeper.
So, to wrap up our explainer, let's just run through the main points. We've seen that BioIslam is put forward as a modern framework for a scientific Islam. It gets there by taking a post-Sufi approach, which means applying a filter based on neuroscience and consciousness studies to the vast tradition of mysticism. And what comes out on the other side? Well, it's an elevation of these powerful, timeless concepts like Hira, that cosmic awe, and Haiba, that joyful bewilderment, showing them to be totally compatible with our modern scientific view of the world.
And that just leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. You know, whether you're coming at this from a place of faith or from science or just as someone who's curious, the larger question here is for everyone. In this age where we have more scientific knowledge than ever before, could these kinds of serious, systematic attempts to blend that knowledge with our ancient wisdom, could that be the next great frontier for human understanding? It's definitely something worth thinking about.